There was a man I knew, not a close friend, more of a neighbor, the kind of man you wave to across the driveway, but never really sit down with. His name was Gerald, and Gerald had a system. Gerald had been saving since his 20s. Every raise, every bonus, every tax return, it went somewhere. An account, a fund, a plan. He kept a notebook by his bed, handwritten projections, column after column of numbers. His wife used to joke that the notebook was his real companion. He laughed when she said that. He always laughed, but I'm not sure it was funny. The idea, the one Gerald had built his whole life around, was that there would come a day when the work was finished, when the numbers aligned, when everything he had saved would finally be spent on everything he had postponed. The trip to Scotland he'd mentioned for 20 years. The fishing cabin up north he always said he'd rent for a full month. His grandson, he wanted to teach him how to play chess. Just sit across from the boy for hours. No phone, no deadline, nowhere else to be. Gerald called it the other side. He was always talking about getting to the other side. I watched him from across that driveway. For 15 years, I watched him leave early every morning in the same gray car. I watched him come home after dark. More nights than I can count. I watched his kids grow up, mostly through holiday photographs. His wife would show mine at the mailbox. He was building something, that was clear. And you respected him for it. The man had discipline, he had patience, he had a plan. But there's a thing about discipline that nobody warns you about. It has a way of becoming the whole life, instead of just the road to one. Gerald retired at 68. A party at the office, a cake, a framed photograph of the team. His wife cried. His kids flew in. He told everyone at the table that night that this was the beginning, and he meant it. You could see it in his face. Genuine belief. He was finally going to live, but something happened, and I've seen it more than once in my years. Something happened that no spreadsheet had ever accounted for. Gerald didn't know what to do with a Tuesday. He'd spent 40-something years knowing exactly what Tuesday was for. Now it was just a day, a blank, quiet, expectant day. And it unsettled him in ways he couldn't quite name. He started small projects around the house, painting things that didn't need painting, reorganizing the garage 3 times. His wife, a kind and patient woman, started spending more time at her sister's. Gerald would call me over the fence sometimes, just to talk about the weather, about nothing. I remember one afternoon, must have been October, leaves coming down. He said to me, "Walt, I don't know what I was waiting for." I thought he meant he was finally at peace, but that wasn't it. He meant he wasn't sure anymore. He meant that all those years of waiting, he might have been waiting for something that didn't exist. The trip to Scotland never happened. Not because of money. He had the money. He had always had the money. It was his knees. One surgery, then another. The recovery longer than expected. Then his wife's sister got sick, and she needed to be close to family. Then the world had its own interruptions, the kind none of us planned for, year by year. Scotland stayed in the notebook, a number in a column, a dream with no departure date. I've thought about Gerald a lot since then, and I want to be careful here, because this isn't a story about a sad life. Gerald had a good life, a solid life, a life his children are grateful for. But there's a truth hiding inside his story that I think most of us sense, but rarely say out loud. The things we save for are never really saved. They are borrowed against time, and time doesn't always honor the terms. The things I hear most often from people in their 70s are never about money. They're not about investment returns or whether they chose the right fund. They're about a Tuesday in October. They're about a fishing cabin they kept meaning to get to. They're about a grandchild they were going to teach chess when they finally had the time. They're about a version of themselves they kept putting in a drawer. There's a woman I think about too. Different person, different life. She spent most of her 50s caring for her mother, who had grown frail and needed everything. People used to say to her, "You're giving up your best years." She would shake her head. She didn't see it that way. She would say her mother was her life right then, and a life isn't something you give up just because it's hard. Her mother died at 91. And the daughter, she was 64 by then. She sold her house. She bought a plane ticket somewhere she'd never been. She didn't know anyone there. She didn't know the language. She didn't have a plan. And she told me later, it was the first time in decades that she felt completely awake. Not because the problems were gone, but because she had stopped, waiting for the right moment, and simply stepped into one. I think about those two people, Gerald and that woman, and I notice something. Gerald had every advantage, the savings, the plan, the security, but he had saved himself for a future that kept moving forward every time he reached for it, and she had almost nothing prepared. And she went anyway. Now, I'm not saying throw away the plan. I'm an old man. I believe in preparation. I believe in stability. But I also believe, and this took me a long time to see, that somewhere between the plan and the life you planned for, most people lose the thread. The notebook by the bed, the column of numbers, the list of places you're going to go. When the time is right, the time is not coming to find you. I learned that late, later than I should have. But I did learn it, and the moment I understood it, I stopped waiting for my life to begin on the other side of something. Gerald passed away 2 years after he retired. A stroke. Quick. No suffering, his wife said. The notebook was still on the nightstand. His wife showed it to me once. 60-something pages of numbers, a whole life of intention. Scotland was still on page 34, just sitting there. Circled in red, a number next to it, more than enough. I didn't say anything. What is there to say? Some things just have to be felt. I'm 78 years old. I've watched a lot of people reach the other side and find it wasn't what they imagined. Not because life was cruel, but because the other side isn't a destination. It's a posture. a way of standing inside your days, a willingness to live in the Tuesday instead of only planning for it. The ones I've seen do it well, really do it well. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't wait for the account to hit a certain number. They didn't wait for the kids to leave, or the mortgage to clear, or their knees to feel better. They found a way, even in the middle of an ordinary life, to stop treating today like the waiting room for something better. That fishing cabin up north Gerald mentioned. I drove past it once, rented it for a weekend last summer, actually. Just me and the water, and enough quiet to think. It was everything he said it would be. Have you been saving yourself for another side that keeps moving forward? That's not a judgment. It's a question I wish someone had asked me sooner.